So I'm going to be talking about the bit that I don't really believe anyone enjoys, even people that have been doing it for 20 years like me, sales, right? Does anyone in the room actually enjoy sales? No? Just about. Do you enjoy the sale or do you enjoy closing the deal? So everyone enjoys closing the deal. I'm Avi Wiesenberg. I'm a partner at TeamX with Ariel. I have been in sales, tech sales, for over 20 years. So I started my career at the big corporate Oracle, actually worked for them in Ireland. I moved to Israel 14 years ago where I joined my first startup. It was a 13-man company called ClickTel. We grew it to about 200 million. I was there from very early days sales. First SaaS company that I ever worked at. I was sending out license agreements and I was sending out SaaS agreements and people were sending me back old school license agreements. And looking at the room, most of you aren't even old enough to know what a license agreement is. Okay, we used to sell perpetual software that lasted forever. You bought the license and it was yours. I'm old enough that when I was at Oracle, we were shipping physical DVDs with the software on. You don't even know what DVD is. Anyway, a little bit about TeamX. Ariel's already told you. We're involved with a lot of early stage companies. I was with Ariel when we invested in Zowie as well. And we're giving a lot of support. One of the pieces of support we do is helping founders with sales, helping you understand how to build those sales, how to understand those early day sales. And what I want to talk today is a little bit about giving you the basic understanding of sales and how to talk, even if you're at that early inception stage, how to talk about your product, how to really understand what the market needs, and how to differentiate that when you start getting to the point where you're actually closing. As Ariel said, it's super important to start thinking globally from day one, and I'm going to try and give you some help and tips on how to think about selling globally. First and foremost, this is from a clip from a film called Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a very old film about sales, and it really was the archetypal stereotype sales environment. Okay, this is a very young Alec Baldwin before he started shooting people, where he comes on and he goes, "Coffee is for closers," right? And everyone heard the expression ABC, always be closing. Okay, it was from this film, and I think sales has evolved. Sales has changed, and that change actually helps startups and helps founders, because it is no longer about making that aggressive close. There still is an element of that you need to do, and you still need to get a closed deal. But a big part of sales has evolved to not just be this go out and drink, right? Half of sales now takes place over Zoom. You don't even get this option unless, like me, you keep a bottle of whiskey next to the desk. My mum obviously thinks I'm super important, right? And I stand in meetings. Society still views salespeople. We're still very, very skeptical of salespeople, right? They're dodgy second-hand car sales guys. Our customers are still thinking we're just there to take the money. We like to think ourselves as hunters in the market, going out there. And in reality, we stand there looking at a screen, whether it's Salesforce or our pipeline or being ghosted by our customers who aren't responding to us. We're literally just staring in front of a screen and wondering what's happening. The number one thing when it comes to sales that you all have to understand is you have to start with why. Why will someone buy? Why will they make a change? Why will they, sign the purchase order? Why are they willing to buy something from you? And why are they going to make the risk of making a change? I'm going to be brutally honest with all of you, okay? No one wakes up in the morning and goes, do you know what I really want to do today? I want to buy a piece of enterprise software. That's going to make my day, okay? No one wakes up like that, okay? So you guys really need to think about what is the real motivator to that change and what is the real cost of not making that change. Ultimately, you are in the business, especially if you're trying to come up with a new innovative product, like you will have a great idea, you're in the business of making someone make a change. This was the change I made about 4 years ago. actually maybe during COVID, about 2 years ago. I lost over 40 kilo, okay? Still very proud of it, and I tell absolutely everyone I meet. It's a struggle every day, by the way. The challenge with it, and this was before you had drugs like Saxenda and all of the great weight loss drugs that are out there now. Why did I make that change? Again, I can wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I really do want to lose weight. But it happens when there was pain. For me, my story was I literally went to a doctor, and although I'm English, I grew up in London, I moved to Israel about 14 years ago, I live in Israel, and Israelis have a knack of being very, very direct. So I went to see a doctor. I had pain on my knee and pain here, and he gave me an x-ray, and he looks at it and goes, yeah, you've got a bit of arthritis. So I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And he goes, nothing. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you're fat. And that was it. And I realized if I didn't want to wake up in pain every morning, right, I had to do something about it. Your number one job is to understand what that customer's pain is and whether it's big enough for them to actually make a change, for them to change the status quo, from them to move from how they do something today to how they do it with you, right? And that's a huge, big change. And it isn't necessarily just the cost of the money that you're going to ask them for. Now, I'm going to play you a short clip from a movie that you've all seen, I'm 100% sure. Wolf of Wall Street. Anyone not seen it? If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's a great movie. Oh, well, we haven't got audio. This is not going to work. Oh, it's on quiet. Okay, we do have audio. Here we go. So, question, Jordan Belfort is a mixed bag, and we can take some things from him, and obviously, ultimately, he was selling air, right? But what, in that call specifically, what was he actually selling?
Paying off the mortgage.
Paying off the mortgage. Spot on. And if you watch the rest of the movie, by the way, and you start asking yourself, what was Jordan Belfort really realizing? And it's clear in the other scene, actually, but I'm not going to show it to you. Everybody wanted to get rich, right? At that stage of Wall Street, you know, everyone wanted to get rich. He was selling the fear of missing out. He was selling get rich, right? And he built credibility, and there's a lot of sales tricks you can learn from that, including perception and how you convey yourself and everything like that. But ultimately, the key, and if he'd done discovery on that call, he would have tried to understand more about what investments they've got, what they're doing. Why someone will buy, you also have to understand. Let me give you your journey that you're going through potentially at the moment as founders, okay? You're at the point where you have an idea, you've maybe got a problem you experienced yourself, you thought, why does this not exist? You did some research, you see no one's doing it, you've come up with the idea, you start chatting to a few people in the industry, you validate if that idea is real, you interview a few people, they all say, yeah, this is great, you should definitely do this. So you go off, you've started building the company, you get an understanding that loads of companies need this. You've got a massive TAM, right? A massive total addressable market. You then start pitching to investors. They're a bit more lukewarm, but eventually you find some that are interested. Then you find design partners, early adopters, people with the problem, and then you go and find even more people with the problem and you keep selling them the solution that you have. What's the number one mistake that you're going to make when you found the problem and you keep selling towards that problem? The problem's going to be that you keep selling the problem and the solution that you had, that you think the market has, that you know there's a TAM, that people have validated for you, that you are completely sold on. And you've potentially spent years percolating in your head this problem and going over and over and over it. So what happens the minute you get on that sales call? What do? You end up assuming that the person that you're speaking to has that problem as well. If you've watched the rest of Wolf of Wall Street, you'll see him sell the pen. Everyone knows the biggest mistake everyone makes when they're selling the pen. They sell the pen. Instead of asking the questions, how do you write? What do you write? What do you need a pen for? And until you ask those, you're going to make the classic mistake of walking in and going, it's round, it's red, it's blue, it does this, 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 and this. The second you get on that call, and I've seen it over and over again, both from inexperienced reps and from early stage founders, is they'll get on that call and they'll tell you what they've been building for the last 9 months based on a problem that they think you have, instead of understanding the actual problem that the customer has. And it may be completely different to what you think their problem is. Now, if you're good and adaptable, you're going to be able to meander and figure out how you can address their problem with the solution that you have. And by the way, the other challenge is that every single person that you speak to, especially in an enterprise, is going to have a different problem, right? So you speak to the finance guy, you can make an assumption. In today's market, everyone's looking to reduce cost. You go back 2 years, by the way, the finance guys didn't give a shit about reducing cost. Do you know what they cared about? Growth. It was growth at all costs. Money was cheap. And if you would have gone in and gone, my solution can help you reduce headcount by 20%, they go, well, I don't care. I need growth at all cost. So you've made an assumption based on what you think the problem is without understanding what they actually care about. And that's what you really need to do. You have to understand the customer. The total problem, the total market problem that you think there is great. And it's fantastic when you want to sell to Ariel and you want to sell to Miha and you want to go, look how big this problem is, I can address this massive problem. But you know what, the guy who you're speaking to, the one that's going to actually sign the purchase order, the one who's going to risk his career in putting you in. And again, I'll go back to that. The risk is way more than just the check. It's the opportunity cost, it's the engineer's time, it's the fact that he's putting his credibility on it, whatever it is. That individual problem is way more significant and you need to understand it. So you have to understand what the customer really cares about. The next question is going to be, this is great, and that's the key to sales. Now we've got a question, well, at very early stage, how do I get people to help me? How do I get those advisory boards built? How do I get even design partners on board? Okay, and there's a few things that I would say. Number one, advisory board members, early stage design partners, stop selling. The number one thing that you potentially have as an early stage founder or investor is, number one, people are excited, especially if it doesn't cost them anything. They're excited to be involved, they're excited to help. And many people want to help, you just have to ask for it. And I think that's super important, especially if you're credible in the industry and especially if you do your homework properly. So if you find someone who's relevant in a relevant company with the type of issues that you might be addressing, understand them. Do the research on them. Look them up online. See what they're tweeting. See what they're posting on LinkedIn. Address it directly and say, I saw that you're doing XYZ or you're using XYZ technology. I come from that background. I found similar problems. Would you be willing to speak for 20 minutes and see if there's a fit so that I can understand more about what you guys are doing? It doesn't start as a sale. It can end as a sale. Because once you've done your discovery properly, once you've done your understanding of the customer, and they think that you're credible, meaning they think you understand the space as well as they do, and you understand their problems because you've built that empathy and you've built that connection to understand their problems, then you can start saying, look, I have a product, it can help you. And eventually you can say, look, I have to charge you something for this, there are costs on my side. And then you're already moving them from design partners into customers. In terms of cold outreach, look up sales development, cold outreach, right? There's loads and loads written online about it. In essence, finding those early stage people to speak to and getting someone to answer your email is classic SDR work, okay? There's no shortcuts to it. Your reply rates are going to be 1 in 20 if you're lucky. The more time you spend personalizing that email and writing it relevantly and reaching out correctly, the more chance there is that someone's going to reply to you. Make it relevant and make sure you're selling the value of helping you, okay? Make sure they view you as credible. Make sure that there's a little bit of bending the truth that you might have to do. There's a little bit of Jordan Belfort that you might have to put into your sales pitch to get that help or to get over the first hurdle. In Israel, we call it chutzpah, okay? It's that bit of being that little bit cheeky, that little bit asking for the little bit more than you would have otherwise, and just trying to push that little bit further forward. The other thing you have to remember with the way you're building your product and the way you're pitching your product is this a nice to have or a must have? Is this something that's really something that is going to revolutionize and change the way I fix the problems I have today, the things that are keeping me up at night? Or is this something where, yeah, that could be cool, but so what? That's really cool, but so what is what causes companies to get stuck and what causes companies to die. I'll give you an example of this. One of the first startups I worked at was a company called ClickTel. Okay, ClickTel is now Content Square. It was at the very early days of web optimization, and we could see where people were moving on a web page, and we could see where they were in the fields, and we created heat maps and all of that. It was 15 years ago, this was revolutionary technology. It was like, holy crap, someone can see what I'm doing on their web page, right? It was mind-blowing, right? Adobe had just bought Omniture, Google Analytics was just starting, and we used to have these sales calls, and we did the call, and then we didn't hear anything back. And on the call, they literally said, you could hear them say, wow. That word was said during the sales call, wow. And then what happened? Ghosting, nothing back. Why? Because they saw it on the call and it looked really cool and they said, wow. Then what happened? They went to their boss or they went to the team meeting and they said, I saw this amazing technology today, new startup based out of Poland. It looks amazing. They can do this, 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 and this. And you know what their boss says? So what? What's that do for me? How's that make my life better? Right? And that is the question you have to answer for them. Now, we were lucky at ClickTel in that web optimization became an industry as we were building this, right? And it integrated with A/B testing. So it's like, you cannot do good web A/B testing without understanding which parts of the page you need to optimize. So it became a package that we built around that, okay? So you have to understand, how does this integrate? How's this going to change the way they work? How's this really going to make things better? By the way, just on the so what question, the Amazon Alexa, right? Everyone remember these? Right? I really wanted one. Now, my wife works in finance. She actually heads procurement for a startup. And she asked me, I said, I want to buy, I have usually ask her everything I buy. And I said, I want to get an Amazon Alexa. This was like 8 years ago, 10 years ago. She goes, why? I go, it's really, really cool. You can speak to it and it'll play music. And she goes, you have 10 speakers. I go, yeah, but it's really cool. She goes, so what, right? And I wasn't allowed to buy it. Do you know when I bought it? Amazon Prime Day, 50% off. So there are other ways of getting a deal done, but it isn't necessarily going to be sustainable. By the way, it gathers dust now. If anyone wants one, I should really put it on eBay. Figure out what you really sell. What are you really selling? What's underneath it? What's at the heart of what you're really enabling and what you're really changing? Things to know as you start selling. And this applies to founders, and we'll talk about it global versus local in a little bit as well. Transfer of emotion, as Jordan Belfort did. People still buy from people, okay? You still got to get the English right. You've still got to be amiable. You've still got to be professional. All of those things apply. Trust and certainty, super difficult for early stage companies, super difficult. There are ways of building it. Present yourself properly. Associate with brands that you can talk about. Again, a little bit of chutzpah. We're talking with, we're working with. That doesn't mean you have a contract with them. It means you're working with them. The previous companies you've been involved with or you've worked for gives you credibility. There are different ways of adding credibility and building trust without necessarily saying you're a 3,000 person company. As Ariel said, don't be ashamed. The world is global now. Everyone is global. Okay, you can present yourself in that ecosystem. Yes, we're based in Poland. Yes, we're opening an office in New York. Yeah, we're opening an office. When we hit 3 million in revenue, we're going to open an office in New York. You're opening an office in New York. You have to navigate and help them buy, which is sometimes very difficult. But this is the number one thing that you guys can bring to the table. And you bring that to the table whether you're looking at design partners, whether you're talking specialist in the field. You are the core specialist. You are the people that really understand your area. Why? Because you've built a startup in that area, in that industry. So if you're building a startup in that industry, you better bloody well know it, right? And that's going to be a big, big bonus for you. Going back to what we were talking about before, how to build the status quo, how to understand it. And this goes into the question of how do I define my target audience and how do I do those questions with target customers appropriately. You have to understand how they do what they do today for what you're trying to get them to change the way they do. So if you've got a new way, I don't know, of doing Excel or some kind of, I'm trying to think of a good example and my mind's gone blank, but doing presentations, you have to understand how this company does them today. Are you using slides? Are you using PowerPoint? And how are you collaborating? Well, we put it in a shared drive. What are the challenges of putting it in a shared drive? Well, we have version issues. Okay, great. I've now understood a good amount of what you do today and how you do it. So I can start understanding the problems in the way you do it today. I can then understand how those problems impact you and affect you and what effect on the status quo is having on the overall business. So you're attaching it from the individual level all the way up. And this unpeeling of the onion is super important in terms of building and understanding and being able to then pitch appropriately, because when you go into your demo, you're going to go, oh, and by the way, you said you guys were really having a problem with collaboration. Here's how we do collaboration in our solution. Oh, you guys were saying that it's created massive inefficiencies in the way you do X, Y, Z. Here's how you would fix that with us. And the minute you relate back to that, you're changing the entire way that you're doing it. Huge amount of discovery, especially at your stage. The sale comes straight flows from that. If you've done your discovery properly and you've understood it and you build it and you talk with them and you literally will slide straight into the sale, because as you present your product, and you've got to be actively listening, but you'll go back to what they were telling you and then go through it and show them how by working with you, it will change everything. Before you start really selling, before you start scaling, you've got to understand who your ideal customer profile is, your ICP. Who is going to be the right person who's got the type of problems you address? Who's going to be the easiest to buy it? Who's going to be the person that actually fits what you're doing? How can you reach them? Where are they? What online communities are they in? What shows do they attend? Who's the right person at the company that you want to speak to? What's the core pain of that ICP and how do I figure it out? What are the peripheral pains? What are maybe the left side issues that you haven't thought about? What are they actually willing to pay? And remember, selling to customers is not the same as selling to investors. There are overlaps. You've still got to present, you've still got to show the solution, you've still got to do your homework, you've still got to research them beforehand, you've still got to understand who the right investor is for you, all of that sort of stuff. But it's not the same. It's much more definitive and you're asking them for much more. You've got to figure out within your ideal customer profile, what industry, what size company, what competitive or complementary technologies do they use. This was huge for us. I'm going to go back to the ClickTail example. We figured out that if a company was using Adobe Analytics, right, Omniture, if they were using Adobe Analytics, they were far more likely to buy ClickTail. Why? Because they'd shown they were already making an investment at a significant level in their analytics, which means they cared enough about their web traffic. So web statistics alone wasn't enough because it wasn't indicative of the maturity of that team. By understanding what other complementary or competitive technologies they're using, you can start learning that better. And there are loads of easy ways to find this stuff out today. How are they actually going to go through making a decision to buy? Who would be involved? And what companies suffer the pain? The other thing I would focus on is what I would call greenfield versus brownfield. Okay? What I mean by that is greenfield, meaning they have nothing in your space today at all, meaning they're completely green. Sometimes that's great. It's blue ocean for you. You can go after it, no one's there, right? There's no competitor. And by competitor, I mean, even if you're going after a space, is your ideal customer one who hasn't yet put in a solution? What's the problem with that? They haven't yet invested in that area, so they might not be willing to invest in this area. On the flip side, they haven't gone for anything else. So maybe you want to get exactly the right size company where they're about to make an investment in this space. And that might be perfect. What's the other option? Brownfield, meaning there is someone there already. There's something already built. A lot of challenges with that. You've got to rip someone else out. What's the cost of change? How deep is the deployment? How deep is the technology integrations? On the flip side, brownfield might be great. Why? Because you're going after competitors where you understand exactly why you're better than them. You know exactly the problem of using that competitor, and you can go in and rip and replace it. Okay? Again, you have to understand your specifics, your company, your solution, what you're going after to understand which of these two is going to be better for you. And then which companies are more likely to be open to the risk of working with you. I personally, as Ariel was saying, the global versus local debate is huge. But today we live in a completely global market, right? Everyone is remote, right? There are a ton of remote first companies. So there's no reason why you can't go global sales remote first, right? Answer the question, where are you guys based? We're a remote only company. Yeah, we're remote only. We're all in Poland, but we are remote, right? Doesn't matter. I do think there's an element, when we talk about that sales element of trust, you're definitely going to be able to build rapport and trust more quickly, more easily with Polish companies. And again, if you target the global brands, no one who you're selling to afterwards needs to know that it's your mate Maciek from L'Oreal locally. And we did that at Zowie, by the way. We massively leveraged that. It gave huge credibility that they'd signed L'Oreal and a couple of other big global brands locally. And I remember on our first calls with Maciek and Maya, they were like, yeah, but these are small teams in, you know, some locally distributed team somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Poland. And we were like, it doesn't matter, you can use the logo, right? And that logo is a global logo, which you can then leverage when you have your next sales call with an international company and go, yes, we work with L'Oreal. And they might ask you where, in which case you'll go in Eastern Europe, which sounds much bigger, right? Again, you're understanding the element of just you know, chutzpah, okay? So it goes back to those two elements, that global versus local, the trust and certainty is a little bit easier locally. Being a specialist in your field is irrelevant. It's irrelevant whether you're global or local. People want to know that you understand the space and you have that credibility in the space, and I think that's easier. So again, from a local standpoint, they know you, they like you, they want to be innovative. Try and think of the reasons why they're buying. And by the way, the reasons why they're buying, a lot of the people that you're dealing with in your market are going to be super passionate about, I don't know, you're selling, I don't know, covers for pianos, right? If you're going after the people that are passionate about piano covers, and you are as well because you've built a solution in this market, that's going to work and they're going to trust you and you've got that specialty and you can connect over that. And actually they may think, you know what, I actually want to leave what I'm doing and join this startup because this is brilliant, right? So you've got to figure out what their motives are, what's really going on, and they're interested in building long-term connections on it. Anyone seen Ted Lasso? The last thing is you've got to believe, okay? You've got to believe in what you're doing. You've got to present it as that, and you've got to make sure that you convey that passion and that belief over as well as you speak to the customers. The last thing is that story, okay? Within the sales element, there's the belief and the passion and the specialty, and there's the story, okay? This is a quote from the book Sapiens and Homo Deus from Yuval Noah Harari. Sapiens rule the world because we are the only animal that can cooperate flexibly, right? Most animals can communicate with each other. They can't tell a story. our ability to tell a story, our ability to give that journey of, here's my story. I was working in XYZ corporate and it was driving me mad. I was losing hours every day to XYZ problem. And I said, there must be a better way of doing this. So I decided to build XYZ and we validated it at these companies. And this is the journey and the vision that we've taken them on and we've built it in XYZ way. That's a story. And we're going to do the same thing for you because what you've just told me, by the way, the best way to ask for that help is to say, I want to see if it's a fit. I want to validate if this is a problem for you as well. We've seen X, Y, Z, and I've spoken to these people who are all, and you may have just spoken to them, but super senior in the market. And they may think that you can connect them with those other people. It doesn't matter. I'm building a community for X, Y, Z. These are your people now. And that story that you're going to give and understand as you grow and build is a big part of it. I'm not going to go into the appendix. I've run out of time. So it's more about some other sales methodologies that will be worth thinking about. So yeah, I think the number one thing I would say, get to the core, unpeel the onion, understand what the real problem is, figure out what you're really selling, which is bigger than what you probably think you're selling, because it has knock-on impact and knock-on effect. Tell it as a story, ask for that help, and build from there.